Hi everyone and welcome back to our combat scenario tutorial short series. In the last episode we talked through how to set up our environment for our scenario. In this episode we're going to go ahead and start working on some basic AI to go into our scene. Now this is not a comprehensive AI tutorial, we're not going to go through that stuff here. I've got plenty of other tutorials where you can see that in more depth. But what we're going to do is get something basic in there so we can easily test it out and get it going. So let's jump in and get that sorted out. So here's our environment from the last episode, and we're pretty happy with how it's turned out, where the players have dropped down, and we'll make enemies spawn in through the door over there, from the ceiling, and maybe from the exit door as well. And we may have a couple already in here too. And as you can see, we put a nav mesh down to block out where the AI could navigate to. So we need to set up some AI. So let's go ahead and create a new folder for our AI. And we're going to create a blueprint class, character, BP, NPC. Alongside that, we're going to need the AI controller as well. So let's search for an AI controller. And if you want more details about what all these things do check out my AI series as we go into a lot more detail over there. I'm going to call it one AIC NPC. And we're also going to have a very basic blackboard and behavior tree. So here's our behavior tree, BT NPC, blackboard, BB NPC. Now what I've got here is the first person template. I need to be able to see my enemies, so what I'm going to do is bring in the third person template as well. To do that, you just right click into your content browser, go to add feature or content pack, and you choose third person, add to project. And after a few moments, that will now appear in our asset browser. So let's go into my BP NPC. And it's over here. Let's give that the mesh for the mannequin. And the animation blueprint. We'll just drop it down to -88 and turn it around. I'm just going to turn the snaps on, makes life a little bit easier. Oh, okay. Here we are. Now, one thing to note with the animation blueprint that you get with the third person content, it won't work for AI. And the reason being is you in your animation blueprint. So if you click on the little folder icon, it'll take you to it. In animation blueprint, there's a bit where it won't work with AI, and that is this get current acceleration. This function looks at the player input. Now, obviously, AI doesn't have a player input; it uses controller input from the AI controller. So we're just going to basically negate that and just put ground speed straight into should move, and that will now work better for our AI. Oh, sorry, one thing we forgot to do is in our NPC, we are going to give them the AI controller by going to class defaults, details, search for AI controller, and I'm going to search for our AI C NPC. Okay, brilliant. And I can just put that into my scene over there. Now, at first, I just want to get them running around. Okay, they're going to come at me, and I want to take them out. So we'll get them coming in there. The next bit is I need them to actually chase the player when they see the player. So let's go to the AI NPC controller. And I'm going to add perception. And on the AI perception, we want to register what sensors we want to use here. Now, for this, I'm just going to do site, nothing fancy. So over here on the right, just change it to include the site configuration. Expand open. You got a site radius, lose site radius, and things like that you can mess with. I usually bring down the peripheral vision half angle to about 60. And then we want to turn on detection by affiliation to include everything. And that'll do for now. Next, we're going to go to the event graph and make it respond to seeing the player. So I'm going to go to the AI perception component, right click on it, add event, and choose on target perception updated. When this function gets called, it's going to give you the stimulus and information about the stimulus and the actor that's been seen or lost or whatever it's been detected by that. So sight will trigger for both when they see them and when they lose sight of them. So what we're going to do here is we're going to check to see, first of all, if this actor is an enemy or player character. So I'm going to do equals to get player character. Okay. And put that into a branch. Now we determined it is the player they've seen, we just want to store that they've seen them and that we have actually got a target for them to chase. So I'm going to take the stimulus out here, which is a structure. So I'm going to break it open, see the content of my structure. And we've got this successfully sensed over here. So let's put this successfully sensed into a branch here. Now, if it's true and it was successfully seen the player, we want to set the target actor on their blackboard. So to do that, we get the blackboard. And then from that, we do set value as object. The key name for this one, we're going to make a literal name, and we're just going to call it target actor. And this will be the player character. So I can either drag it in from this actor here, this player character here. But if you've got lines going everywhere, you may not want to do that. So I'm just going to put in another get player character reference here. Like so. So now once it's seen the player, it's going to be, we want it to be chasing the player. Okay. So let's compile and save that. We'll come back to this later when we add more details to this, as I do want to include some more details. But let's come out of there and go to our blackboard. So on our blackboard, we do have to give it that new key we just made. So I'm going to go to object, and we call it exactly the same as we had it in our controller. So target actor. We then, when we're using an object key, we need to go to the key type on the right hand side and change the base class to what the base class is. And we're going to choose actor. Save that and close that. We're then going to go set up the behavior tree. So let's go over to the behavior tree. And on the behavior tree, we're going to add in a selector to go into a sequence. And we'll just call this one combat sequence. Now the combat sequence will only work if the target actor has been set. So to do that, we're going to add the blackboard condition to this sequence here. Again, if you want to learn a lot more about behavior trees, do check out my AI series. Again, we go into a lot more detail over there. But on this combat sequence, we're going to add a decorator, blackboard, and on the blackboard key, you change it to target actor. So now it will only do the combat sequence if that thing has actually been set. If it has been set, great. Now we're going to go ahead and make them chase the player. Now, easy way of doing that is by using the default move to node and changing move to be the blackboard key target actor. And save this. Okay, so it's a very basic setup. Obviously, we'll be coming back to this in due time, but I just want to see if this is working. Whenever I'm working with AI, I just want to get the basics in there first, make sure it's working, and then move on. So now we've got the behavior tree, got the blackboard, got the controller. We need to now tell the controller to run that behavior tree. So we are going to say on the AI controller here, on begin play, run behavior tree. And choose the behavior tree from the drop down. So now he'll come over to me and he sees me. Okay. That seems to work just fine. Now, a big thing about AI in games is that we don't want the AI actually doing anything or running anything without the player being actually there. There's no point in having AI wandering around unless the player can actually be part of that conversation. So what we're going to have here is going to disable dead possession. So on your BP NPC, the actual actor for this, if you go to the controller settings in the class defaults, which is down here somewhere, let's just search for it. Controller, there we go. In fact, let's just type in pawn. There we go. There we go. And in the pawn, you'll see it auto possess AI is turned on to be placed in world. So basically what that means is that the AI is going to be possessed by the controller as soon as we place it into the world. Not spawn it in, but place it into it via the editor. So it's automatically going to go off, no matter what we do. Now, normally when we're building out levels, we don't want to do this. Usually, we want to change auto possess AI to be disabled, and we're going to control when their possession actually takes place. So let's go change it to disabled there. Now when I jump in, you'll see that nothing actually happens because the controller doesn't actually activate. Okay, they're not actually doing anything. So what we need to do is have some sort of activator which can activate all the AI going on in our scene. Now, what's crucial for a combat scenario is some sort of manager that's going to look after what's going on in that environment, in that arena. So what we're going to do is going to create another actor called the combat director. So let's go ahead and create a blueprint class actor, BP combat director. And all we're going to do in this is add a component for the box collision. And the point of the box collision is to act as sort of a net to know which actors to include, as well as to determine when the players entered the arena. So I'm going to bring that into my scene, like so. Now, I want to give it that box obviously the right shape. So what I'm going to do is my details panel, I'm going to select my box and resize it in the general tab. You see box extent 32 by 32 by 32. We're obviously going to make that a bit bigger. It's better to do it like this rather than scaling it. So if you were to add anything else to this, which we'll do in a second, you don't want it to be affected by the scale of the actor entirely. So use the extents instead. So just going to make sure we cover the area of our arena. Like that. Like this. Okay. Now, if you do have an arena that's an odd shape, so it's not perfectly square and you want to exclude certain parts of it, one thing you can do that you may not realize is that in your details panel for this instance of the combat director, you can add more components to it. So let's say I want to add another box to it, add another box collision. And again, I can change the extents of this and move it to wherever I want. So I want to include this second room, I could do. Yeah. So it's a lot of flexibility. You can just keep on adding more shapes to this if you like. I don't need an extra shape for this case, but that's what you can do. Okay, so the combat director is set up there. Next, I need to tell the combat director to fetch when the player has walked into it, and then fetch all the affected AI inside of its area. So let's go to the combat director, go to the event graph, and on begin play, we're going to do get overlapping actors. And we're going to filter it by our NPC class. Now, if you've got loads of different types of enemies, make sure you are using a parent enemy class that all your enemies are children of, and then use that parent class here. Okay, that way you'll guarantee you'll pick up every single one of them. So I'll get the overlapping actors, and then I'm going to promote that to variable, and we'll call this one enemy actors. Okay, next we're going to do actor begin overlap. And it has to be actor begin overlap, not component overlap, because we may add further shapes to it. So this will respond to all of the shapes. we're going to check if the other actor is equal to the player character. Put that into a branch. So if it is equal to the player character and the player character has walked into it, that's when we want to activate our AI. So we're going to create a function in here called activate enemies. And for that, we'll take our enemy actors, do a for each loop, because it's an array, we're going to do each one. And for each one, we want to tell them to possess. And so to possess their controller, the easiest way of doing that is by going spawn default controller. Now, the moment you're going to see this is a problem. It won't work. And the reason why it won't work is because this reference here is an actor reference, not the character reference that we need it to be. Okay, so that's because this thing here returns actors, not the class that you want it to be. So what we need to do is we need to either cast it or we can use an interface, whatever it may be. So let's use an interface. If you want to cast it, it's as simple as just cast to NPC and run from there. But what we're going to do is we're going to do an interface. So we're going to go to blueprint interface, BPI, combat, and we'll do one in here called initialize combat. Okay, and this function will be set up. Now, the benefit of using an interface is that we can call interface on any actor, and if it has the implementation of it, great, it'll run it. If it doesn't, it won't run it. So now what I can do is go to my BP NPC and go to the class settings and add in here BPI, interfaces would help. Interfaces, and search for BPI combat. And when I do that, you'll see over here in interfaces, we've got initialize combat. So we're going to open this up, and all we're going to do in here is do spawn default controller. And what that will do is it will spawn the default AI controller and get possessed by it. So all we've got to do is go back to our combat director, and on this for each loop, the array element here, we're going to do initialize combat. And you'll see it come up with a message denotation as well, and you'll have a little envelope icon over here too. That's just indicating that it is an interface call. Okay, so there's our activate enemies. Let's go back to our event graph, and on this at the begin overlap, we only want this to happen once, so we're going to do a do once. And we're going to call the function activate enemies. And there we are. So when we overlap it, we check if the player character, and then we're only saying do this once only, and then activate enemies. The reason why we put do once here in the event rather than the function is that the event, the do once is not going to be forgotten. If you put do once inside of a function, it'll be reset every time the function gets called. So very important difference there. So before, when we ran this, the enemy didn't move, and that's because we didn't have a controller assigned to it. Now we've got this combat director sort of managing the situation. They should be able to go in and grab all the enemies and tell them to turn on when I walk into the area. So let's take a look. So what's the problem here? So the problem we have here is that the combat director looks like it may be collecting the overlapping actors too soon. So what we're going to do is give it a little delay at the start here. And 0.2 seconds is fine, but you can give it whatever you like. Hit play. And now it'll work. Okay, so that little delay just gives it enough time to spawn in all the enemy actors and then grab them, and then it can run the code. So there you go, we've got our AI, basic AI anyway, set up in our combat scenario. And we've introduced the concept of the combat director, this sort of thing that manages the situation, manages the arena, and kind of dictates how everything should go. Now, if you want to see the next part, where we're going into more about the AI, more about the combat director, and how to set up events that happen during the combat, you can check out the next episode right now over on patreon.com/Ryan Laley. If you like this video and want to support the channel more further, head over to Patreon or become a YouTube member. Massive thank you to all the patrons and YouTube members for their continued support. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all next time. Bye everyone.